Hello, everyone. Are going to explore the second chapter of Broder's book. This chapter is about everyday life, what ordinary people ate, how they lived, and how daily habits shaped human history. In other words, we are moving from big historical ideas to the material life of real people. Last time, we went over the book's introduction and traced the author's overall argument. Now, as we continue our historical investigation into the foundations of modern Western civilization, we're going to begin looking closely at the material life of people from the 15th to the 18th century. To begin today's class, I'd like to start with a quick quiz as a quiz. Which of these two people do you think looks more civilized? On the left, we see someone clean shaven and dressed in a Western style suit eating steak. On the right, we see someone with a thick beard wearing simple everyday clothing and eating cereal, grain, basically. As I have emphasized before, the term civilization is relative, so we should use it carefully. But in this class, we are not talking about spiritual or religious civilization. We are focusing on material civilization, and therefore on the economic dimension. What we eat, I mean, our diet, what we eat is a major part of our material life, isn't it? If so, between steak and cereal, which food would you like consider more civilized? If you have already read the book, the textbook, uh, uh, Broder's book, I think you can answer this question easily. For both you and me, as people from non-Western regions, it might be natural to see Western clothing and especially a diet centered on steak as more Western and therefore perhaps more civilized. At the very least, we cannot deny the historical fact that from the early modern period onward, the West overwhelmingly dominated the non-Western world in material terms, in terms of materiality. From that perspective, one might equate Westernization or Western world with becoming civilized. As we discussed last time, according to Broder, what was the key indicator of a society's level of civilization? Its degree of material development? Does anyone remember? Broder argued that the most important measure of material life was population, the number of people, and therefore population density. So, from that numerical perspective, which economic activity would be considered more advanced and more civilized? As you see in the picture, pastoralism on the left, like raising domestic animals, or agriculture on the right. And which one has broadest perspective? The correct answer is agriculture, the right side. According to Broder, from a purely numerical perspective, if we make an economic judgment based on calories, farming is overwhelmingly advantageous. Yeah, definitely advantageous. Why is that? Because grain cultivation can feed 10 to 20 times more people than pastoralism. Yeah, I mean stock breeding or ranching can. The grain is more effective than stock breeding in terms of calories in terms of the amount of energy. So for Broder, the key is grain, the staple food. Instead of emphasizing hoarding or secondary industries, he places agriculture and particularly grain cultivation at the center of this analysis. So therefore, our focus on the primary food source, the oldest and most important sector of the food economy, agriculture, and the food that agriculture produces. Among these, we will look at the three most significant crops. The first one is wheat, and the second is rice, and the third is maize or corn. These crops still occupy the majority of the world's cultivated land today, and they have shaped the lives, material conditions, and even in some cases, the mental and cultural world of most of humanity. And this is why Brodel refers to them as the plants of civilization. The plants of civilization. Among these civilization crops, the one that represents West civilization is wheat. It is primarily used to make bread, the staple food of much of the Western world. Of course, wheat was not exclusively European. It was also cultivated in China, Africa, India, and even regions like Siberia in Russia today. However, for various historical reasons, wheat came to symbolize Europe. In fact, actually, Europe played a major role in spreading wheat across the world. It was Europeans who carried wheat across the Atlantic to the Americas, North and South Americas. Ultimately, the global presence of wheat today reflect the expansion of Europe. So it is called, they say, wheat was the symbol of Europe's civilization, the true measure of life itself. Let's see the map of like geographical distribution and limits of wheat. As you see, the regions in green color is the regions wheat, especially for the round Mediterranean Sea, and especially the Western and North Europe, right? And the north of India and the China. These regions are like so-called wheat regions, especially for the southern areas of southern Europe, Mediterranean regions, the homeland of wheat. Since antiquity, yet plagued by wet summers, poor soils, and irregular rainfall, is remained low. Interesting, right? And in Northern Europe, the cooler and wetter, rather than wheat, rye and oats replaced wheat. Now, for the Eastern Europe, however, vast fertile plains, including Poland, Russia, Hungary, turned into major wheat exporting regions for the West during the 17th and 18th centuries. Thus, therefore, the map of wheat mirrored mm, the reflected the great climatic and economic divisions of Europe. One of the main problems about wheat is that it has low yields, and wheat is like labor-intensive agriculture. Before the modern era, wheat is extremely modest. On average, one seed produced only 4 or 5 grains. Exceptional areas like Lombardy in Italy or the Flanders, Belgium, and Netherlands today reaches 7 to 8. This meant that farmers consumed nearly all they produced, which means that the surplus, the remains of the consumption was minimal. The agricultural world remained locked in what Brodel calls the age of biological constraints. Moreover, wheat cannot be cultivated on the same land for 2 years, running without serious harmful effect. It has to be rotated. So in the medieval ages and in modern period, the European systems of crop, this is like, especially for wheat, is like this. We call it two systems of crop rotation, like this. There are two kinds of the crop rotation. The first one is two-field system, and the second is three-field system. It depends on like depending on areas or regions. Uh, Two types could be the mixed. The point is you cannot use the certain area, certain field in 2 years for wheat. If you planted the wheat in a certain field, the next year you should put it as a like a fallow, meaning stop cropping, and it could be used for the other livestock, the pastoralism. So that's the main features of the wheat and making bread from wheat. So it is not a good way for everyday life. So in that aspect, wheat was not the most good product for everyone. Wheat was the most sensitive of all commodities. A bad harvest instantly led to famine, while abundance drove prices down. So they say the price of bread or the price of wheat was the thermometer of social life or economic life. Anyway, because transport was slow and costly, each region still depended largely on local self-sufficiency. The problem of bread or the problem of wheat was a problem of distance. So nearby abundance could not always reach starving regions in time. I'm saying that wheat is like basic grains for all the European people, but it has some like weak points. And despite this the weakness, interestingly, European people tended to have wheat or bread as a like everyday food. And then most flour, the wheat flour was ground by water-powered mills, which is spread widely after the Middle Ages. White white flour was rare and costly, and it's the privilege of the rich people. Common people ate brown or mixed bread, wheat with rye, barley, or oats. So the like wheat grains is expensive and mostly for the rich people, whereas the common bread were from the like mixed grains, especially rye and oats. Barley is more cheaper than wheat, and white bread was a dream, and white was the color of wealth. So peasants reserved white wheat bread for feast days or ritual for certain rituals. So everyday food for common people especially is not wheat grains, actually the mixed ones and the cheaper one, including rye and oats. And anyway, wheat and bread was a social equilibrium indicator, like indicator of meanings, reflecting a social equality. Small changes in price could trigger riots and revolts. So city ministries or the governments constantly try to stabilize the bread market or wheat market. including great markets. A government feared bread riots more than war. A kind of like the like civil war, right? So the bread crisis of like 1788 to 1789, the French Revolution, just before the French Revolution, was the culmination of this structural instability. Broader, the extends the story beyond Europe with European colonization, with proud to Americas and Asia, even in the Australia, creating new world granaries that would later feed industrial Europe. By the 19th century, wheat had become one of the earliest truly global commodities, and it was unlike globalized. And it as the symbol of European civilization or the as Western civilization, the grain of wheat and the bread from wheat became the symbol of like Western civilization. That's the point. For broader, to summarize, wheat is not just an agricultural crop, but a mirror of civilization. It embodies Europe's dependence on nature, the limits of pre-industrial productivity, and the deep link between food, economy, and the social order. The price of bread reflected the rhythm of life itself, its shortage, fears, and fragile stability, which thus represents the slow time of material civilization, which is of the Western civilization, and becoming dominant throughout the world in later in modern era and later on. It's the end of the first session. I'll come back with the second session. Okay, see you.